So, welcome to Moonstone Island, a cozy game where you explore islands, farm, raise spirits, and maybe even fall in love. Now, the game's tutorial does a pretty good job of introducing a lot of basic concepts, but I also know that tutorials are very often skipped. So, in this video, I'm going to be breaking down many of the game's systems based on my own personal experiences, giving some tips and tricks, and then, if you want some spoilers, going into the materials that you need to enter each of the temples, and giving a couple ideas about how to take on the bosses. Now, while I have played the game for quite a few hours, and if you want to see my full thoughts, do be sure to check out my review that'll be linked up in the card and down below. I certainly don't think I know everything. So if you are a more experienced Moonstone Island player, or you find this video helpful, and you come back to it later after finishing all the tips and tricks and progressing, do be sure to comment down below with some of your own tips and tricks for new players. And hey, if you'd like to see stuff like this, maybe get subscribed, ring that notification bell, and leave a like while you're down there. But for now, let's get into things, starting with some of the major systems, including exploration of the world, farming, creature combat, villagers, and a few miscellaneous things towards the end. One of the things you'll be doing on Moonstone Island is farming. Or I guess I should say one of the things you'll be doing in Moonstone Island is farming, because you don't have to farm just on the main island. You can build a farm pretty much anywhere you want, though you might have to worry about things like wild spirits if you do go elsewhere. Now, some crops, like these bolts, can be reharvested. This means for the entire spring, I'm able to get crops provided that I plant it once. Though if I want to enhance the stats, I will need to keep applying fertilizer. On the other hand, something like these flax flowers can only be harvested once before they need to be replanted. Now luckily, as you build out your perks and talents, you'll get some seeds automatically, but early on that won't be an option. So the first thing you're going to need to do is explore a little bit. You can find all of these crops growing across the different islands and biomes, just like this. But instead of harvesting, use your scythe to cut it down and gain some seeds. So if you have some spare seeds, you should come over here and sell them to either Ophelia or Gianna. Also, whenever you're speaking with a villager, do be sure to use the chat options to maximize your relationships. You sell seeds using the sell seed option just like this. Not only do they pay 150% of the value, but they then choose to propagate the seeds. This means, when you head down to the general store, a day after selling any seeds for the first time, you'll be able to purchase the seeds for a nominal fee. This effectively means infinite seeds, and you don't have to go to the outer islands to refill your seed stocks, at the very least if you don't want to. So for example, I'm gonna talk to Rowan here quickly, then shop. And here are all the seeds I can buy. So, for example, right now I have, let's say, bloodroot. I have 9 bloodroot seeds. I want to get a couple more bloodroot seeds. So, I'm just going to come here, scroll down, bloodroot seeds, buy, I don't know, 7 of them. There we go. You can also buy a whole bunch of different fertilizers. So if I want my bloodroot to grow even faster, I can buy, say, 8 growth fertilizer for 40 coins each. Not only will I get the plant, but I'll get it sooner, which is really good for things that have a long growing time. Whereas something like the healing, tame, or power fertilizer is good for crops where you don't need it to go fast, you just want the best stats possible. So for example, if I want to replant my flax here, I can do so by selecting the seeds and then just putting them down. Though you might notice, I'm using a very specific pattern here for my plantings. That's because you need to do 2 things to ensure crops will grow. The first is till the land. So this is done with the hoe, and higher tiers of hoe mean you can plant more things in an area, just like that. But you also need to make sure it's watered, which you can do with a Moonstone watering can, or pretty much any upgrade of watering can, or you can do by crafting a sprinkler. Sprinklers are crafted right here. They require 1 copper ingot and 1 iron ingot. So you'll need to go into a mine and smash some rocks to get the ore, then refine it at a furnace. But after you do, you're able to get a sprinkler that automatically waters your crops every day. That way, even if it's not raining, you don't have to spend a whole bunch of time and effort watering all your crops. Also, let's say you don't like the fact that your farm happens to butt up against your path. Well, don't worry, you can repair that using a hammer and flatten the ground again. Now, when it comes to farming, there's one other very important rule. You can only grow crops that are within season. So in the spring, you can grow stone fruit. Or alternatively, you can grow water crops by planting things on the edge of water, which is why I have these nice long pathways extending all the way. But let's say you want to grow something that's out of season. This won't really be a concern of a very early part of a game, but as you explore, as the seasons pass, you'll definitely want to start growing a couple of things out of season due to their superior stats. Well, that's what a greenhouse is for. In the greenhouse, you can grow crops from any season, and again, if you have the sprinklers, they're going to stay nice and watered and happy. For a lot of these crops, you'll also notice the little dots like the green here and the blue and the orange. Those are the fertilizers. They enhance a different stat, so all of these, the orange means the taming stat is enhanced. The green here means that the, I believe it is EXP stat is enhanced. And then the blue means the stamina stat is enhanced. Because each of these crops offer a variety of bonuses to both yourself, restoring your stamina so you can do more in a day, and can be fed to your spirits to boost their stats. For example, these bolt plants. If I go into my medallion here, and I have, who's a good spirit to give stuff to? You know, let's give it to this guy. He's a lovely little guy. 30 speed, feed a bolt, 35 speed. This will very much give you the edge in combat against wild spirits, and is super useful if you're ever going to go into dungeons or clear the temples. Also, make sure to stock a lot of a taming food if you're trying to collect wild spirits. Something like the flag flower, or early on, even just a simple flax flower. Also, anytime the seasons change, at least until you've built up a big seed base, absolutely fly to all the different biomes you've discovered and gather some of the plants to obtain their seeds. You can do this by harvesting the plant manually, if you're able to get seeds from harvesting, or alternatively, you're going to need to use the sickle to cut down the plant. And for some plants, a higher tier sickle is required, so I would recommend that you upgrade your sickle before many of the other tools. Now sometimes, as you explore, you'll encounter these dungeons. They look like this on the map, and then they have a little red archway. Inside the dungeon, you'll see a powerful golem. From here, you're pretty much left to your own devices to explore. There will be creatures to battle, and so this is a very good time to talk about the game's combat system. You have up to 3 different spirits you can use in battle, and all of your movesets are card-based. So, for a quick refresher, this would be my Darklock, who is weak to Psychic and Ice, and as a Dark type, has a lot of powerful Dark type abilities. His special ability, Time Heals All, heals the spirit back to full health for every 5 rounds of a battle. On the other hand, the Armbot here is an Electric type, with shocking moves, but it's weak to Dark and Psychic, so let's exploit that here. First, I'll cast Nightfall to gain energy and draw more cards, giving myself options. Then, I'll cast Enlighten Plus, a Psychic type move for my Shadeling, to triple my energy. By default, you start by being only able to generate 3 energy per turn. However, as you get more cards and as you advance, you're able to get quite a significant amount. I now have 12 energy, so I can pretty much play every single card in my hand. Now this Mind Spike will do 96 psychic damage and remove 1 armor from the Armbot, whereas it only does 64 psychic damage to the Cumulo. This is because the Armbot is weak to the Psychic, whereas the Cumulo isn't. You'll note here that Cumulo is weak to Dark Poison, Armbot Dark Psychic, and then Sparky Dark Fire. This is because electric types are weak to Dark. Every electric type will be weak to Dark, but the second weakness is always rolled randomly. Just like how my Shadeling, the first weakness is Earth, Psychic is always weak to this, but then Water rolled randomly. Dark is always weak to Psychic, the Ice is random. Fire is always weak to Water, but the Psychic is rolled randomly. Random weaknesses help to keep combat interesting. So in this case, I'll use Mind Spike Plus, and there we go! Instant KO. Admittedly, I'm probably a little bit over level for this, as my spirits are about level 60 and I'm against level 30s, but we'll just gloss over that. And you know what? I'm also going to KO here. Then end my turn, because I want to demonstrate one other interesting thing about armor. There's a type of card called Bash. This is a skill that scales off of your spirit's speed. it removes armor from an enemy spirit. When you remove all of a spirit's armor, it becomes staggered, losing its turn, and vulnerable. As you can see, the torch now does 135 fire damage instead of a normal 60. This is because Sparky is weak to fire, so the torch is going to do way more damage, and because Sparky's stunned due to having its armor broken. Even the tackle, which is a normal type move, therefore normally does not have any bonuses, does 72 instead of a regular 48, again due to the stagger. There is one more really interesting layer to battles, and that is the ability for you as the Spirit Tamer to interfere and stack the odds in your favor by feeding spirits a variety of crops to either give bonuses or inflict penalties. So, for example, let's say I wanted to make my Spirling more powerful. I could very easily do that by feeding it a Nimbus plant. This increases its power stat by 3, so now all of its moves do extra damage. On the other hand, maybe I want to tame that Capacity. Well, I could feed it a Flag Flower that gives the taming stat, and all of a sudden you can see its heart start to fill up. So let's advance to the next round, and fill that heart so you can see what happens. Alright, and here we go. When you fill the heart, you have a taming chance. Most of the time it'll succeed. On higher level spirits, it's more likely to fail. Then after that, you can either add them to your medallion if you have less than 3 spirits. You can move them to the Spirit Barn where they'll generate you resources, or you can move them to the Science Center. As a tip, when exploring dungeons, always keep an eye out for these treasure chests. Now, once you see this energy restoration pool, you know you're right before the boss. So feel free to hop into it, restore any energy that you spent to the dungeon, and then it's time to take on the Golem, the big bad. The Golems have different elemental themes, and they are accompanied by different creatures, but at the end of the day, they work pretty much the same way. So, every round, the Golem will gain 1 armor. It has a lot more health than a normal enemy, and it has a lot more armor than a normal enemy. But if you're able to exploit its weakness, which in this case is Darkened Earth, you can take it out without too much issue. Also, if you have really high-level spirits relative to the Golem, you can kind of just overwhelm it, using something like the Fire Breath here. As you will note, earlier in this dungeon, I fed my Spiraling a crop that increased its power by 3, and that bonus is still persisting. Bonuses persist for the entire day, unless you feed it something that will overwrite the bonus. Alright, as a note here, armor plays a really interesting role in multi-hit attacks. So, this fireball will deal 33 damage, but the Bark Bite has 3 armor, so it would do 30 damage per hit. Still pretty darn effective. On the other hand, the Guardian has 15 armor, meaning it would cut that 33 by a flat 15, making Fireball far less effective than something like Flamethrow. So against heavily armored foes, it is very often better to hit less times but harder, as opposed to more times but weaker. Or in the case of something like Flamethrow, use an absolutely spectacular card that has a lot of power behind it, even if it is a little bit more expensive. Alternatively, you can deal with that another way, by bashing, completely removing the armor, and then nuking the target into oblivion. So once you complete the dungeon, you get access to a bigger treasure chest. There we go. And the Endo Tree. When you complete the Endo Tree, your total stamina is permanently increased. There is a talent that further enhances this. So if you have FOMO and you don't want to miss out on it, I recommend saving the dungeons till later. It's the Endo Acolyte. That said, I found there are plenty of dungeons. I haven't even done about half of the dungeons available in the game. I have plenty of stamina, so realistically, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Now, after you tame a few spirits, I recommend purchasing and then later, over time, upgrading a spirit barn. When you have a spirit in the spirit barn, provided you're able to keep them fed, which you can do early on with fibers, and later on with this spirit grass feeder that's automatic and permanent, occasionally they will give you resources. These resources are unique to the spirits and cannot be found elsewhere. And also, I don't have inventory space to pick them all up because I wasn't paying attention and I carry around too much junk. But in short, not only are these resources required to enter some of the temples, they are also required for certain potions, other sorts of gear unlocks, and they are quite valuable. So since I don't particularly need these resources, I'm just going to come over to the handy dandy sell box. And as you can see, dark matter, 400. It will sell for more if you go down and give it to Zed in person. Fireball, 300. Snowball, 150. If you're looking for a little bit of extra income, this is a good way to do it since it's fully passive once you've invested the resources in making sure your spirits are safe and secure. The more spirits you have, the more resources you get. Now look at the time. It's almost 2 a.m. and you do not want to stay up after 2 a.m. So it's time to head to bed and sleep for the night. As you journey around the islands, you'll encounter these gateways, and they give you a very special bonus. So hold to activate, and you can choose a talisman. The Cleanse Talisman removes a card from your spirit's deck. The Meditate Talisman upgrades a card, and the Study Talisman gives the opportunity to add a new card. Whenever you encounter one of these, you should activate it. But don't worry too much about treating this like a limited resource. While the gates remain active for an entire season, as the seasons change, the gateway is going to refresh, so this is an unlimited resource, provided you're willing to be a little bit patient. So when it comes to spirit taming and combat, there's a couple things to remember. First, smaller decks are better than large decks, so you won't want to add too many cards, and ones that you do add should be impactful. That said, I have a moderately large deck of about 50 cards, and it still feels reasonably consistent because I have quite a few draw effects. Number 2, each spirit has its own unique ability. Some of these are out of combat, some of these are in combat. This, combined with a weakness system, means there's a lot of opportunities to balance strengths and weaknesses and customize your playstyle. But also, the game isn't super difficult combat-wise, so if there's a spirit that you just really like using, don't feel bad about it, you'll be totally fine, it just might mean you have to grind a little bit more. And last but not least, as you keep exploring the world, you're also going to encounter several temples. These require specific items to access, which I'll cover in a special section later in the video, and they also give you one permanent tool. So for example, after entering the Summer Temple, you get the flippers, which allow you to swim through water. You will want to do all of these eventually, but they are significantly more difficult than the rest of the game's combat, so don't feel too bad if it takes you a little bit to get your spirits up to snuff. Also, should all of your spirits be defeated in combat, don't despair, you will lose the day, but there's always tomorrow, and you can wake up fully refreshed, albeit a little bit late, and give things another go. Next up, let's take a look at some exploration topics, things that you're going to encounter as you go from island to island, starting with how to find a mine. Now to get ores, you're going to need to find a mine. You do this using your hammer to smash rocks. Mine can spawn under pretty much any rock, though it doesn't spawn at the very outer edges of the island. So, this rock here would not spawn a mine. But this rock could, or this rock. Might take a little bit, and that's going to be a serious energy investment early on. All right, here we go. When you go into the mine, you're going to find, a lot of rocks, and you use your hammer to smash them, gathering things like coal, stone, copper ore, and iron ore. There's also going to be a few spirits that you find in mines, and a few chests. The exact number of spirits and chests does seem to be randomly generated, though some are certainly better than others. At the start, gathering these materials is going to be a fairly arduous task, but later on, with better hammers, and of course, more upgrades, it'll be an absolute breeze. As you can see, I've barely spent any of my stamina bar, and I've already cleared out quite a few rocks and gathered quite a few materials. The ore is later smelted into bars, like so. That uses coal, and then the stone is used to build things such as housing upgrades. So you'll want to explore quite a few mines, and you can even get the Barkbite Spirit to spawn a second mine on all the islands. Unfortunately, these don't respawn over time, so after you clear out all the mines, yes, you will be out of this limited resource. That said, I've never come even close to running out of any of these materials, and I haven't explored the mines on most of the islands. As you're using your tools to fly between the different islands, keep an eye out for the noticeable glow of Moonstone. This is a rare and valuable resource that you should absolutely look out for and collect wherever possible. Also, as a note, after you find a Moonstone on an island, don't bother searching it further because there's only one per island and they either respawn very slowly or don't respawn at all. I actually can't quite tell because it's really hard to remember which islands I've been to and which islands I haven't found a Moonstone on yet. Moonstone Island has 4 distinct seasons. Each season has unique plants for you to encounter and harvest, and some of the seasons have special effects. So, in the spring, everything is green and vibrant, and you find a lot of fast-growing crops. In summer, things are a bit hotter, and I also found that many of the summer crops grow pretty quickly. But as things go to fall, the greens turn to golds. In some ways, fall is the most colorful season, but in others, the green is a little bit brighter and more vibrant than the dull orange. Also, many fall crops can be reharvested. In winter, special ice spirits appear out in the world. This is unique to winter, so you can't find them at any other time of year. In addition to this, the ground is frozen, so you won't be able to harvest any of your normal crops. Instead, you're going to have to go around or use your greenhouse. And then, of course, after winter comes spring, and the cycle repeats again. Each of the different islands present a different biome. There's a grassland biome where you can find earth-type spirits. There's a beach biome where you can find water-type spirits. There's an electric biome, which will zap you, reducing your stamina by 10 when the bar fills, where you can find electric spirits. A fire biome, where everything is, of course, very burnt. You can find, you guessed it, fire spirits here, and it does constant ticking damage, at least until you get some fire resistance. There's a poison biome, where nearby stumps leak clouds of poisonous gas. This is fine as long as you stay away from them, but if you touch them, you lose some energy. And you can find poison-type spirits here. And then, very occasionally, you will find an island that is a dark biome. This has very dangerous, high-level dark-type spirits, and in addition to that, it does massive ticking damage per second if you don't have any dark resistance. In terms of danger and safety, generally speaking, the islands closer to the center are safer, and the islands towards the outer edges are far more dangerous and have rarer and higher level spirits. As you're flying around, look for an island on your map marked with a swirly. This means it is under the influence of a psychic storm. This rare event results in a couple interesting things. First up, psychic-type spirits are able to spawn on the island during a psychic storm. And second of all, there are special crops that can only be found during one of these storm events. So, anytime you see an island under the influence of a psychic storm, you should absolutely check it out. Like, look at these guys. They're adorable. In fact, I don't know if I've even captured this spirit before. So I'm going to quickly feed it and add it to my collection. There we go. Look at that cute little guy. Yeah, you can go straight to the Science Center. Now, since the crop spawns are random, I'm not sure if I will or won't be able to find any. Oh, I see one. Here we go. In the spring, you can find magic mushrooms. As a note, I do not recommend smoking them. Look, another cute little psychic creature. It's just a ghosty guy. Here, little ghosty guy. Let's be friends. Now let's talk about the Moonstone Island villagers and the shops you can find around. First up, the tavern, which is not open on Mondays. But when the tavern is open, you can buy a variety of food items, including coffee that helps you run faster. Next up, we're going to come down here and check out Zed's Observatory. This is where you do all of your spirit stuff. So, if you send a spirit to the observatory, this is where you're going to go to interact with them, and you can do this even if Zed isn't around. In addition, you can speak to him to sell spirit materials or turn in spirit research. This is basically the number of spirits you've seen, banished, and tamed. And you get nice financial incentives for doing this, to a point where this is where a lot of your money is going to come from, especially in the early game. Late game it does kind of fall off though, since you've probably seen and banished and tamed most, if not all, of his spirits. Next up, we have the Forge, where you can sell your unneeded ores and bars to Farah, or you can upgrade your tools, though admittedly there's a point at which you will have all the tools, in which case you can't upgrade them anymore. You can also buy ores and bars, but I really don't recommend that unless you are super desperate. In the general store, you're able to buy fertilizers, and as you unlock them, a large variety of seeds. Initially, this won't be here. This is all from finding the seeds and selling them to either Gianna or Ophelia. Next up, we have the Carpenter. This is where you can buy decorations for your house, or you can even get random blueprints to get decorations that you don't have, like that. A few decorations, some basic materials, and you can expand your house. So maybe I want an attic on my house. Well, I'll just hand over the stone, the wood, and the money. There we go. Tomorrow morning, I'll have a nice attic. Up here, this is where you can buy a variety of plants. Also, this is where you can sell seeds. And as you sell seeds, they will be propagated to the general store. As a quick tip, check out this statue as soon as possible. This is where you get the warp whistle, and if you talk to the statue once a day, you'll get a random item. Sometimes this is a gemstone that can be sold for money, sometimes this is a random piece of produce, and sometimes it's a seed that you can use to grow even more crops. And last but not least, here we have Tobin's Fishing Shack. You can buy all things fishing. Well, you've got all sorts of lures. If you don't already have a fishing rod, you can buy it here, and you will definitely want to spend some time fishing to fill out the nice fishing case here. Moonstone is the highest rarity, so as you can see, I've probably spent a bit too much time doing this. In addition to the villagers you find on Moonstone Island, there's also the mysterious magic man Waldo. He sells a variety of cards and spirit talismans. But at least at first, he only appears on one of the other islands. Don't worry, after a time you'll be able to find him on Moonstone Island as well once you resolve his questline. Now, whenever you meet a resident of Moonstone Island, I recommend that you talk to them. For example, Cleo here, you can use either talk, joke, or flirt. This gives more relationship status, but it's more likely to fail, and the higher your relationship, the more likely it is to succeed. There we go. You can talk 3 times a day by default. You can also give a gift. Just be careful, you don't want to give someone something they don't like. So, for example, the gemstone was a perfectly acceptable gift, but not Cleo's favorite. Last up, you can also ask characters on a date, which I'm not going to do here for Cleo because my character is already happily married. So instead, I'm going to cut to another clip of a date that I did in the past. Now, to be clear, relationships are not a progression system in Moonstone Island. You don't have to do them or engage with them if you don't want to. But personally, I did find it quite nice to get to know the various residents of the island and see some of their personal stories unfold. Now let's go over a variety of crafting benches and systems you get to interact with. First up, there's the crafting menu. This allows you to make basic items. But not everything can be crafted here. For some things, you need to go to the Moonstone Enchanter. This can be simple stuff like the Spirit Stall and Spirit Nest, needed to house spirits in your Spirit Barn, or an entrance to the Spirit Barn itself, a tent to set up your home on a different island, some various other homes, even late-game items like the Moonstone Bracelet and Moonstone Wedding Ring, which you use to, of course, propose to your crush. Then you've got the decoration station, where you make, you guessed it, decorations. You can brew various concoctions here. So let's say I wanted to make something that helps me tame and also debuff a spirit. I could put in a flag flower for the tame stat, and then I could put in a nightshade to lower its vitality. Now, it will get much weaker, potentially being easier to defeat, while also getting tamed. This isn't a super effective concoction, by the way, this is just something random with what I happen to have in my inventory. Something that would be more effective would be to take out the nightshade and instead put in a flax flower, because now you get plus 10 tame from the flax flower and plus 40 tame from the flag flower for a total of plus 50 tame. There's also the cookbook, where you learn a variety of recipes, and then, by gathering the materials, you can of course cook them over at the stove. See, this is the hard part, because some of these have mystery ingredients that I don't actually know if I can make right now. Mystery tart. So it's dough, sugar, and an unknown crop. And I strongly suspect I know what crop it is. I suspect teeny tiny tarts require teeny tiny flowers. So I'm going to grab 3 of those. Let's see if I have some dough lying around. I might. It looks like I don't, but I have water, and I have flour, and I can use water plus flour to make dough. Here we go. So now, because I don't know the ingredients, this isn't a for sure thing. This could fail. But I select the ingredients, I set start, and now we wait for that to finish cooking. Meanwhile, I'm going to talk about a couple other things. Like the cauldron, where you brew a variety of potions. By the way, if you think you've made a mistake with your skill allocation, just drink the skill reset potion. It's pretty darn easy to get after you tame a couple psychic types. And over here at the anvil, you can provide a bunch of materials like, say, copper, iron, and moonstone to craft charms, which render you immune to the elemental hazards you will find while exploring. Skills are accessed through the mirror and do appear sometimes at night. So now is also a good time to go through that. First up, you have Spiritmancy, where you earn the points by interacting with spirits. As you can see, I have it maxed out. Some of these skills, like Tame Wizard and Spirit Walker, are mutually exclusive. I could either tame spirits more easily, or give my spirits passive EXP. Again, if you regret your choices, you can always swap it with a skill reset potion. Personally, I really like the Master Spiritmancer tree, so going all the way down here, because that way I can use tamed spirits of any level. I found that it was easier to simply catch a higher level spirit than grind out and level up the spirit that I already owned. Now for combat, there's a lot of stuff like energy bonuses. For example, energy boost. Start combat with 1 extra energy. This is really nice for wiping out enemy teams very quickly. If you like to gamble, you could instead go for critical hits, or maybe even close call to have a chance of incoming attacks doing 0 damage, but I found these to be way too RNG and unreliable. So instead I went for Expert Cartomancer and Transmogrifier, basically getting better and better cards when adding things to spirit decks. After you're happy with a deck, you could always drop these and go back to close call and critical hits. For Archaeology, I haven't actually done enough dungeons or mines to fully max this out, but the one that I would certainly recommend is Ando Acolyte, since it gives you more permanent stamina. Though if that feels a little bit weird to you and you're FOMO, don't worry too much. It's not super required or anything like that. Now in Agriculture, on the left, you get a bunch of bonuses for fertilizer. On the right, you get some bonuses to make crops more valuable. But what I would strongly recommend is starting with Propagator into Green Thumb, so you have a chance for seeds and your crops grow faster, and then Lucky Landscaper for even more chance to get seeds. This really helps you sustain your farming. On Foraging, Link to the Grass is nice for some coins, but realistically the thing that you want to get is Moonstone Minded and Moonstone Mancer, because Moonstones are super valuable and relatively limited in supply. After that, getting things like the angler stuff is really good if you want to catch all the rarer fish. Last up, Social. If you want to marry someone, you will need to go all the way down to more than a crush. Aside of that, I like Early Riser. This is a chance to get some extra time in the day, 30% chance to wake up 1 hour earlier, and Forgivable, because sometimes you just go out exploring and pass out in a dungeon and you totally miss your date, and you don't want people to reduce their friendship as a result. Alright, there we go. Tiny Flower Tart. The recipe guess was indeed correct. It gives 150 stamina, which is really good, and 10% fly speed. There is one other event that you could do. So I'm going to come right over here and grab my handy dandy fishing rod. Yep, that's right, you can go fishing. The minigame is simple enough. Just cast out your line. If you make a perfect cast, I don't exactly know what it does, but I try to do it anyway. It's hitting the exact apex. Reel in when you get the little exclamation mark. Then just keep the cursor on the fish. There you go. Easy fish. Each fish has a different rarity, and it also has a different quality. So bronze is the lowest quality, and moonstone is the highest quality. The rarer fish are also more valuable. And personally, I found that fishing was a really good way to make a nice amount of money. So there we go. A silver ringfish, which is worth 60, or more if you go down to Tobin, and a gold Sisyphish, it's worth 120. So now that I've covered the basics, I want to go over a few tips and tricks. The first of which is, make sure to plan your harvests, because at the end of a season, all of your crops are going to die. That's right, all of those beautiful reharvestable fall crops, the minute it turns to winter and the ground freezes, they're just going to be withered yellow plants. You can still harvest them for fibers once, but that's about it. Number 2. When exploring islands in the early game, be sure to use springs to restore your stamina. This is a great way to restore stamina without spending any resources, and it's also a good way to extend your range when you're traveling pretty slowly. If you're worried about running out of time, remember to pick up the warp whistle at the statue in town so that you can always warp back to Moonstone Island before it hits 2 a.m. Now for number 3, open the game's menu, come down to gameplay, and turn Always Sprint on. This increases your run speed, and I'm embarrassed to say that I played the game for a really long time without knowing that this was a feature, or without knowing that sprint was a feature at all, actually, so I moved much more slowly. And no, sprint doesn't cost you any resources, it's just run faster. I guess if you want a slower paced game intentionally, do leave it off, but for most people, I recommend having it on. Now, number 4. Some food can be fed to your spirits to give them one-time bonuses. For example, I pretty recently acquired this spiraling, so I can feed him a sweater cookie, which gives +1 armor. This can only be done once per spirit. Some Zap Plant Ramen, yep, that's right, +1 to speed. Some Coldberry Lasagna, +1 to vitality. Always feed your spirits any plus stat food that you've unlocked, as this will allow you to maximize the bonuses that they have. And last but not least, there is a difficulty indicator on the outer islands. So, when you land on an island, look at your minimap, top left. If there's a yellowish tinge and the circle isn't filled very much, that means spirits are slightly higher level than yourself. On the other hand, if it's bright red, glowing, and angry, that means spirits are much higher level, very dangerous, and you should avoid combat at all costs. Now, aside of that, there are a lot of other smaller tips and tricks that I kind of sprinkled throughout my beginner's guide section here. Things like making sure to sell to the appropriate vendor to get 1.5 times the money, getting the warp whistle, looking out for moonstones, being able to reharvest things at gateways, all that fun stuff. But I didn't want to get too bogged down in rehashing everything, so watch the beginner's guide section again if you want to know more tips and tricks. So, there are 4 temples in the world of Moonstone Island. Each is associated with a season and an element. To progress through each, you're not only going to have enough spirits to combat the enemies there, but you're also going to need to make some offerings. And that's what this is going to focus on. First up, the Spring Temple, which is dedicated to the element of Earth. To gain entry to the temple, you need to offer a cattail and a stone fruit, 2 crops that grow easily in spring. After gaining entry, you have access to the Alchemist's Wand, which you can use to grow vine plants and, in general, any of your crops by spending significant amounts of stamina. To progress through the rest of the temple, and of course obtain the Earth Seal, you'll need a copper ingot, iron ingot, these are found by smashing some of the rocks in mines and then refining them, clay, which is found by putting an Earth Spirit in your spirit barn, and a moonstone found anywhere most easily at night. Since all of the spirits here are Earth types, if your spirits are weak to Earth, this might be a little bit of a struggle. Next up, there's the Summer Temple, which is themed around the element of water. To enter this, you need to offer a beach peach and a pinwheel flower. And your reward is going to be flippers. These allow you to swim around in water very easily, very, very handy for traversal, and even swim up and down waterfalls. Now to advance, you'll need a lantern and a jewelfish. Jewelfish is relatively easy. You catch it in beach biomes, including on Moonstone Island near Tobin's shack. The lantern, on the other hand, is crafted at the decoration station. To advance to the end and obtain the water seal, you're going to need sea glass from putting a water spirit in your spirit barn and a moonstone. If you're noticing a pattern here, yes, you're going to need various elemental spirits in your spirit barn and a moonstone for the final stage of each of the temples. Now yes, this is a water temple, but luckily there aren't any raise the water level to this exact point kind of puzzles. There are, however, a lot of powerful water spirits, so if that's your weakness, maybe swap up your roster just a little bit. After that, in the fall, you have the Poison Temple. To gain access, you need a Grumpkin and a Spiky Plant. These are found in the, well, poison biome. And your reward is a boomerang, which can be used to harvest seeds from range, pretty handy, or to stun spirits, which you also need to progress further into the temple. After this, you'll need a concoction and an iron sheet. This concoction can be any crops at all. Just put 2 crops together, brew a concoction, and you're good. The iron sheet you need to craft at the anvil, and it shouldn't cost too much, just 3 iron ingots. For the final stage, to obtain the poison seal, you need poison, again, poison spirit at your spirit barn, and a moonstone. Since the spirits here all do poison, I found that they were considerably more dangerous, as the damage over time effects can be quite impactful, but also I did have a spirit that was weak to poison, so that might have colored my experiences. And then last up you have the Winter Temple, which is aligned with the element of lightning. Gain access with a bulb shroom and a popcorn plant to get the teleporter. This is a very handy traversal tool that allows you to completely ignore terrain by teleporting a short distance for 30 stamina. To progress, you're going to need a cinderfish and a beacon. The beacon takes quite a bit of progression on some of your quests to get the recipe, but eventually you will be able to craft it with a Moonstone Enchanter. And for the final phase, to get the electric seal, you combine sparks with a moonstone. Sparks obtained from having an electric-type spirit in your spirit barn. And I found the boss to be really interesting because its special ability is that it zaps one of your cards. So don't really spend too much time thinking here, just play your cards very quickly, as each time it zaps a card, the energy cost goes up, and you may end up with a hand of completely unplayable infinite cost cards. Now, after you complete the dungeons and get all 4 seals, what do you do with them? Well, you will need to complete the Magic Man Waldo's quest. You do this by completing 15 out of the 30 dungeons available in the game, thus restoring his mirror and his memories. If you do, you're able to step into the mirror and place all of the seals around the rift to confront the game's final boss, which is Missing No. Yes, it's a nice little Pokemon reference. This powerful dark type has a massive amount of health, constantly summons ads, and has a move that sets all of your spirits to 1 health. Though one thing that I noticed is if it sets your spirits to 1 health, its ads will never use a damaging attack within that turn. Or at the very least, they never used a damaging attack within that turn while I was fighting it. First time I was underleveled and I got completely destroyed, which is very dangerous because Waldo tells you that you almost lost everything. But after training my spirits up and specifically capturing a couple of nice wild spirits, I came back, I had a whole bunch of consumables. This is very much a fight to throw just all of your consumables. Use potions, use concoctions, use everything. And I beat Missing No, thus completing the game and gaining access to an item that I can craft in my house. They give me 1 moonstone a day, and yes, you can make as many as you want, so you pretty much have infinite moonstones, which does make the game's progression much easier from there, which is certainly a nice little reward for beating the game's final boss. With that said, I've now talked about some things to get into at the start of the game, tips and tricks, all the materials you will need for the temples, along with some of my experiences, and even a few of my thoughts on the game's final boss. So, is there anything else to cover? Well, there's certainly a lot more to explore in the world of Moonstone Island, but I'm going to leave that to you. Though do feel free to share your experiences down in the comments below. For now, if you're looking for something else to watch, I'll leave a couple recommendations to other cozy games up in the card and down in the description below. You can check some of those out after this. But for now, thank you very much for watching to the end. I'm glad you've enjoyed, good luck on your journey, and I'll see you in the next one.